Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, what is it? It's Friday. Hey, we made it all the way to, okay, all right. Oh, the Trump Fridays. Oh, boo, it's Friday. All right, Friday, May 9th, 2025. Time to push forward with another show, whether we like it or not. And everything is A-okay. I'm learning to monitor my Teams channel, although my phone still seems to think Skype works. So it's kind of interesting. I get notified twice of everything, which is fine. I probably need 2 notifications for almost all of these things. And golly, there's lots to catch up on. And who knows whether we're going to do it or not. And as we've been saved by the bell on a couple of stories, which I guess are now stories in themselves. And maybe a Friday is a good time to catch up on things like that. But let's see. All right, let's see. Since we spoke last, I don't know. Oh, there's a new pope. And the Pope is American-born, and it's generating all sorts of problems online as people are like, oh my God, the first American Pope. And people say, reminding us it's the first North American Pope. Okay, first Pope born in the United States. And the guy's pretty interesting. He spent an awful lot of time abroad as well. He's also, apparently he's a dual citizen, a Peruvian dual citizen. Born in the United States, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, already the Trump people are reacting very poorly to it because, as it turns out, he doesn't appear to be particularly Trump-friendly and maybe actually anti-Trump. That's one of the bonuses, I guess, of getting a U.S.-born Pope who, you know, grew up and had a career as in the church here in the United States and a life alongside it, and left a social media imprint behind. Things will change. But yes, they immediately found out, and there was some interesting people collected some great things over on Twitter. I think Megyn Kelly was observed, trying to be the pious Catholic and saying, oh, white smoke, they've selected a pope. This is so exciting. Praise be, or whatever the hell she was. And then she found out eventually, who is this pope and what's he like? Oh no, woke communist pope. And they're already on that, by the way. Yes, they are saying woke Marxist pope is what they've got in store for this guy. It didn't even make it through an hour before they were declaring that to be the case. So what's his name? Robert Francis Prevost? Not Provost. He's not like running the colleges. He's a Prevost. And born in Chicago, and he's like, 69 years old, which is nice. Everyone always enjoys that. So, he's got a little while left on the clock, right? As popes go, they get good health care, I think. So it's been real interesting. And he's like a regular guy. It's kind of interesting to see. This was, I assume, was the case with all popes. I mean, modern popes, that there are plenty of people in their home countries who say, oh yeah, I remember when he was the parish priest here, there, or he was just a regular guy. Now he's pope. But this is kind of cool because we get to see it happening in American context, and it makes more sense to us. It would have made plenty of sense, I think, to show us that for previous popes, but because it was happening in a foreign country, it wasn't, it wasn't documented in the same way that we're used to seeing things documented, I guess. And bringing up old news reports in a different language doesn't necessarily translate for us. So, I don't know. It's been kind of interesting to watch. So, pictures of the new Pope. So, what is he? Pope Leo XIV, which is good because he can tattoo that on his knuckles and not have a 13 and get deported. It's Pope Leo XIV and previously Robert Francis Prevost. And I saw some interesting articles about people who knew him coming up, and he'll always be Father Bob to me. That's kind of an interesting thing. Father Bob's the Pope now. Wow. That, I guess, is kind of cool. So this woman that I happened to see a news report about, I probably should have saved the news report, but it's not important to our discussion. You'll find it to be true, and it's out there. But she was just going on about how, imagine this, right? The guy who's now the Pope officiated at this woman's sister's wedding. Wow, cool. And friends with her dad, and they went to White Sox games together. I did see people accurately predict that it was a great day for social media to make Chicago Pope jokes, like Chicago Hope, Chicago Pope. So there's some great memes out there. People turning using all the Chicago hooks. All the papal bulls now will be Chicago Bulls, that kind of stuff. And I found a Obama. What was his name? Shepard Fairey. Was that right? The artist who made the Hope poster has a meme generator out there, so I was able to throw in a picture of the new Pope and make it a Pope poster. It was all very exciting, and just seemed interesting. I think I made a joke about something with the Cubs. Although I think when I did it, I was like, something tells me that he's probably the other team, right? And somebody said, as a Chicago Catholic, much more likely that he'd be a White Sox fan. I didn't know that it divided along. I assume it divides along neighborhood lines, and neighborhood lines divide along that kind of ethnic line. Not real sure, but it felt worth throwing out there, because otherwise you're talking about, ecclesiastical stuff, and I don't know anything about that. Anyway, seems like a nice fellow. He had apparently spent a great deal of time abroad. Now he's a dual citizen. He's spent a lot of his last couple, decades in Peru, as it turns out, so he'll be connected there. Also, here's Justice has sent me his favorite Pope jokes. Let's see. Truck of transubstantiated deep dish Chicago pizza and a pale lager on every corner. Yeah. I thought it was very smart in the Vatican to pick an American Pope to keep tariffs low on communion wafers as well, right? So now the question is, was there a signal being sent by the Vatican, the College of Cardinals, in choosing an American Pope? Because I don't know. What reason would there be? It could have gone one of two ways. And when they first announced it, and I think the first bit of news that we got, oh my gosh, he's an American Pope, and no one really knew too much about him just yet. It only took about 15 minutes to find out about what he was like. But the question was, did they choose an American Pope to bow down to Trump? Look, we picked an American Pope. Don't be mad at us. Although that did seem very un-Vatican-like. Not that I thought that there was a belligerent, standoffish Vatican, but more along the lines of, we really don't, operate in the same spheres here, and you can't really bully us per se. Like, what are you gonna do? You can't tariff us. You could. They are a country, but they don't, export, and you can't tariff Catholicism. Although you can't, quite honestly, he's gonna have a hard time tariffing movies, which he has insisted he's going to do. But I don't know. He could certainly make your life more difficult. Or, though, did they choose an American Pope in the sense of, well, look, there's a global rise of, there was planned to be a global rise of right-wing weirdo governments that were going to kind of cooperate internationally, a political union with Russia to own the globalists, etc. And now, of course, they've defeated the right-leaning candidates in Canada and Australia, which is good news. But I wondered whether there was some calculation in choosing not only an American Pope, but this particular person who appears to be, kind of against this stuff, as you would hope religious people would be. But, we have weird religious people in this country, everywhere, but we have a lot of weird ones. And maybe they thought, this is a way to stand up for a, liberal human rights oriented program and do it in a way that is sensitive to the American political situation, but from a position, the papacy, that can't really be bullied the same way even foreign politicians can. I mean, foreign politicians are doing fine telling Trump to screw off when necessary, but they're subject to punishment and subject to just, targeted hate, essentially. Now, it's not that Catholics aren't from time to time subject to targeted hate, but I think we've gotten past the worst of it, and it's no longer acceptable or feasible for ultra-conservative, ultra-nationalist, right-wing politicians in America to be overtly anti-Catholic. And in fact, most of them have converted to Catholicism in order to be even more right-wing and doctrinaire. A weird type, but Catholicism nonetheless. Which, by the way, a 100% chance that Dodgy is going to outlaw Opus Dei because DEI, their search terms will turn it up. And we don't know what that's going to do to American ultra-conservative, ultra-nationalist Catholics. Anyway, lots of interesting background on the guy. And in fact, I thought I might open up an article or two and read a little bit about this. CNN had an article that, well, there's a lot of good headlines. If you go to Google News and just put in Pope Trump. And remember, it's only been a couple of days since Trump was circulating on Truth Social AI portraits of him in papal vestments, suggesting I don't know what. But, I heard an interesting story about that too. And I think Josh Marshall at TPM was saying I should be taking notes about the things I need to look up now so I can share them with you, just so you can see them too. Maybe you want to share them as well. But he said that he had heard that, I guess, there at the Vatican during the conclave, when they're preparing to name a new pope, but they're not sure who it's going to be, that they have some number. He said 3 sets of sort of papal vestments and different sizes and different cuts available, so that basically whichever cardinal they select, they can find something that'll fit him right away, because they bring him out and introduce him to the crowd in St. Peter's Square. And then he assumes, and I think we can all assume this is correct, that later on, after the initial appearance, then it's off to the tailor to get bespoke papal vestments. So, seems interesting, like that could be true. And I guess they keep them around. Right, I was wondering, do they give them away to Central America, the other sizes, like afterwards, like Super Bowl gear for the losing team? They got to have things at the ready, and then they have to dispose of them. I don't know. Probably not. Let's see. I wanted to share this. We'll take a look at this article here. The first headline, anyway. CNN, new pope appears to have reposted critical social media posts about Trump and Vance. That is clunky as hell, but I guess you got to be careful. And they decided to spend the extra words saying this relatively precisely. People were pointing this out. First one that reached, it's probably reported in here, but first one that reached my eyes was a shot at J.D. Vance, but it wasn't something that, how do we refer to him? Does he now everything retroactively be, he was the Pope even then? How do we refer to him? It was, the poster formerly known as, I guess he was Cardinal, right? Cardinal Robert Prevost. Did they still say? Oh, do you have an answer for this?
No.
Production staff?
I had something else that I thought.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take a look at that too. But I'll ask you. But
this is very American.
Hey, everybody. What? This is very American?
Interview with
last Saturday?
Brother.
Oh, John Prevost. Oh, okay, his brother. Well, you'd figure there's got to be siblings in American Catholic film, right? Well, no, but all right. John Prevost, there's probably like 30 of them. Is that wrong? John, he's very pro-natalist. John Prevost knew there was a chance his brother could be elected pope, and that's got to be something, too. But, God, Thanksgiving's ruined. All right. Last Saturday, I know I can't see. Last Saturday when I was at church, says John, and really, now you can go to the big church. Last Saturday when I was at church, one of the priests came over and told me the odds in Las Vegas were 18-1. I heard there was betting on this, said Mr. Prevost, who lives in suburban Chicago. He didn't have a doubt. He thought it would definitely be my brother. But Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who was preparing for the conclave, shrugged it off when his older brother called from Illinois. Okay, no way it's going to happen, he said.
I just thought the Vegas odds were funny.
Yeah, you know what? Send me that article so I can give it. But that's true. Vegas odds, that's funny. Popes have to deal with that now.
knowing the odds.
Yeah, right. Well, right. He knows the odds. Now the question is, did he bet? And if so, how much did he make? And if so, does 10% go in the plate? Anyway, I don't know. I think I was going to ask, but I guess it looks like the news convention now is to refer to him as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, as opposed to when I was growing up, they still, for most of the time, they still did it the other way. They would have said, what, Robert Cardinal Prevost? And I'm not certain why they ever did that, but they did. I remember this from the Archbishop of New York, always being referred to as John Cardinal O'Connor, right? And I was like, well, that's lucky to have that middle name, and then stumble into, oh, I see, I didn't realize. And I wondered whether is that supposed to be like they're just adopting his, that's just his name, John. He's John, also known as Cardinal O'Connor. Not that your middle name now becomes I don't know. I don't remember I don't know why they did that. At any rate, now they know the odds of their becoming Pope. They have the option to bet on it. I assume there's a meme coin involved at some point, but not for this Pope. He apparently is, one of these. Well, he's the head of the what is it? Augustinian order, and I read a little bit about it, and takes the humility and poverty vows a little bit more seriously maybe than, say, I don't know, medieval popes perhaps. Anyway, CNN had this story about his social media activity. The newly elected American Pope Robert Prevost, there's the answer of what you can refer to them that way, appears to have previously reposted, you could say, social media posts critical of Vice President J.D. Vance and the immigration policies of President Donald Trump, views that were in line with his predecessor and could cause friction with the White House. Except, what would be the friction? How would it manifest? Anyway, an X account listed under Prevost's name did not appear to personally write any of the critical posts, but reposted articles and headlines from others. CNN has reached out to the Vatican. They're probably busy. X, and that's not Roman numeral 10. That's X as in Twitter. And friends of Prevost, but has not been able to independently confirm the X account is connected to the newly elected Pope Leo XIV. And I think they should rename X as XIV. Why not? Anyway, Trump said Thursday he was, quote, very happy about news of the first American Pope. It was unclear if he had been told about the apparently critical social media posts, and the White House did not respond to a request for comment about the post. And if they were smart, they just never would. There's no call for responding to it at all, but they will. And Trump will probably be critical. And it's a good thing this didn't happen earlier, because if Easter was rolling around, good, happy Easter to all the losers and haters, even the new Pope. Oh my God, don't do it. Anyway, Trump, okay, so he said he was very happy. It wasn't clear whether he knew anything. Vance's office pointed to a statement the vice president had made earlier when he posted his congratulations on X. And he may be savvy enough to leave it at that. But who knows? He's been emboldened by the other idiot. The posts took aim at past comments from Vance accusing the far left of caring more for migrants than American citizens, as well as the Trump administration's wrongful deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an undocumented immigrant who was residing in Maryland before he was sent to a Salvadoran prison. Everything is weirdly phrased here because there's no language for what's happening. The latter was the subject of the most recent critical repost. On April 14th, the account reposted an article regarding Abrego Garcia and a piece written by Auxiliary Bishop Evilio Menjivar, maybe Menjivar, Evilio Menjivar, hopefully, I don't know, of Washington, D.C., which you'd think I'd know better, but he's only an auxiliary bishop, so I don't know. I don't think I've ever run into that title. But anyway, the bishop, who's auxiliary. Is this like an acting bishop? What's an auxiliary? Is a volunteer fireman / bishop? What is that? All right, I'm not up to date. on these things. However, I guess they just call him Bishop. The bishop argued, I guess correctly, the federal government has pursued a shock and awe campaign of aggressive threats and highly visible operations of questionable legality that go far beyond mere immigration enforcement. That's quote enforcement. A judge has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S. Before that, on February 13th, I mean, this is going back a ways, the account shared a letter by former Pope Francis, and I mean, can't fault a bishop, a cardinal on Twitter sharing letters from the Pope, right? In which he condemned the Trump administration's mass deportations. Francis especially criticized deporting those who have fled their homelands due to poverty, exploitation, and persecution as damaging to the dignity of men and women. And, you know, that's where his focus ought to be. But in case you have difficulty agreeing with that, it's also, by the way, I would tell you, damaging to the dignity of Americans who are supposed to stand up for this sort of thing. But I digress, or do I? An authentic rule of law is verified precisely in the dignified treatment that all people deserve, especially the poorest and most marginalized. Actually, that's quite in agreement with that point. The true common good is promoted when society and government, with creativity and strict respect for the rights of all, as I have affirmed on numerous occasions, welcomes, protects, promotes, and integrates the most fragile, unprotected, and vulnerable. This does not impede the development of a policy that regulates orderly and legal migration, Francis wrote. In another social media entry, on February 3rd, the account reposted another article related to Vance's assertion in a January Fox News interview that the far left seems, quote, to hate, unquote, American citizens and prioritize love and care for migrants above their own family or neighbors, which is a good thing in the Catholic eyes, I would assume. Not the hate part, but that's not even accurate. But yeah, prioritize and love others over yourself, you know, to a certain degree. I think that's okay. Anyway, there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that, Vance said. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a theologian, but that seems upside down. Like, where did you get that? They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That's no way to run a society, he continued. The article that the X account reposted, written by Kat Armas for the National Catholic Reporter, argues that Vance's statement, quote, echoes a medieval concept known as Ordo Amoris, the order of charity, which, quote, feeds the myth that some people are more deserving of our care than others. The headline reads, J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I understood that. Vance met Pope Francis in Italy hours before his death, and unfortunately we're speaking of the death of Francis. The criticisms extend to Trump's first presidential campaign as well. Back in 2015, Prevost also reposted an opinion piece written by Cardinal Timothy Dolan, in the old style, Timothy Cardinal Dolan, entitled, Why Donald Trump's Anti-Immigrant Rhetoric is So Problematic. Anyway, yes, so this is the basic facts of it and how it worked out. Oh, I should just finish this thing and get on with it. But I was going to say what it ended up looking like reposting this stuff. You know, you forget the little notations that say so-and-so reposted, or the dynamics of posting a link to an article. But there was then essentially some X postings that said, you know, they were from Robert Prevost, and the text of it was, J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our loves for others. That's not what he said, but he was pleased to pass on that headline, which was attached to what Kat Armas had said. Okay, so there's like just two more paragraph bits here to finish out this article. The account took aim at other political figures as well. In November of 2016, the account reposted an opinion piece that said former Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, quote, alienated, unquote, voters, including Democrats, due to the party's, quote, extreme abortion position. That's not going to get out from under the abortion thing. From inside the Vatican, anyway. No time soon. The account appears to have been created in 2011 when X was called Twitter, way back when. The majority of the posts are reposts of various articles rather than originally crafted text or content. At one point on Thursday, the account had less than 800 followers, but as of 5 p.m., it had grown to more than 232,000 followers. So that's an interesting dynamic all by itself. I guess he gets his own, doesn't he get a Pontifex account? Comes with the job, I guess. So it should be very interesting. And I'm sure, there's less content there. He's a grown man who's busy and got responsibilities. But, he's connected to the world. Anyhow, it was interesting to see, and I'll have to try and find that article about him hanging out in Chicago and what his relations were like there. But we've come to the end of our first segment. It's an important thing. I didn't, really anticipate talking about the Pope for that long, but I don't know how you can't get into this and get interested in it. And then, of course, when it makes news that way, oh my God, the wackadoodle president of the United States and vice president as well might both get in some kind of weird Twitter war with the Pope. What does that mean? And hopefully we're right in figuring it doesn't actually mean very much, and they'll get bored with it and leave it behind, because I think they'll get bored because they will very quickly find there's just no way to punish the Vatican and not get in trouble with your own voters, swing voters and hardcore MAGA. All right. Well, I hope that's the case anyway. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. I'm just, I was using my time searching for, see if I could find the various things that I mentioned. I should be doing this after the show, of course, but I thought it might lead to something fun. Can I find the Josh Marshall post about the papal vestments or not? And I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, let's see if I can get back to the idea. Oh, I did find the Chicago Sun-Times piece that I was thinking about the Pope's background in Chicago. He appears here in a photo taken at the 2005 World Series, in which the Chicago White Sox were playing, and he's in the corner of this photo, but just sort of he is at the game, like talking on his cell phone. He's in the corner of the photo. He's not the main subject of the photo, and he's wearing a Sox jersey and a coat and just normal street clothes, like a human being would. But it's kind of funny. Now we'll only see him in the papal vestments. Here ever afterwards. Oh, by the way, in celebration of having the American Pope, I understand the Vatican immediately threw the Pope mobile in the Red Sea. It's just to try to, get some common ground with the current American regime. Anyway, that's not true. Here are some things I wanted to share with you that don't immediately appear to have anything to do with the Pope, and yet you might need to know about. Let's see. Oh, right. So also while we were away, since yesterday, new Pope, and I told you some stories I was waiting to tell you. Now we are saved by the bell from absolutely having to tell them, but horrible, ridiculous, terrible Ed Martin, the not acting but interim, and I found out what the difference is there. Now I'll see if I can remember it correctly. DC, or the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., who was in the job in an interim capacity. Apparently, the interim is the designation if you come from outside the department and are temporarily named to head it, either while your own nomination is pending or someone else's nomination is pending. You're interim, and you're limited to, I think, 120 days, which means that his time is up, and he needed to either be confirmed on a regular permanent basis or replaced. Acting, that is to say, acting directors or secretaries or U.S. attorneys come from inside the department who inherit the job by virtue of the post becoming vacant, and they promote from within. And that's a job you can hold on to. I don't know if it was indefinite. I guess so. But it's always, been supposed that it was during the time of the pendency of a nomination for someone else. But Trump is so slow in making these nominations, and in some cases simply just says, I just want acting. And it may be that it's a little bit, I don't remember the rules on this stuff, because none of them matter anymore, I guess. But yeah, I felt like there was some time pressure on those two, that they sort of operated a little bit like a recess appointment, in that you could remain in an acting role perhaps until the end of the session or the session of Congress, after the one during which you were named. I mean, that's the way that recess appointments work anyway. So if they work on the same basis, it would be something like that. But there's a much longer time horizon for acting officials than for interim officials. Anyway, so he needed to get his confirmation moving, and then it looked like Tom Tillis abandoned him, which was fantastic. You don't have to hand it to him, but that was good call, because he was really a horrific nominee for the job, wholly unqualified, and without any understanding of the innate understanding of the limitations of the law and the way that the office should be used. As you know, just from hearing the stories of him writing letters to Georgetown University, Catholic University, by the way, and insisting that they had to essentially let the White House and or the U.S. Attorney for D.C. dictate their curriculum. Like, what are you talking about? Not only is that outrageous for a private college or even a public college to have that kind of direction, although that's the trend these days, is to try to mandate certain policies, at least in public universities, and there's plenty of stories we have still to share about that, but you've heard some of them. But to do so not only to a private institution, but to a Catholic institution, which has a very clear hierarchy of where they're going to be getting their direction, and saying, to hell with that. So that may be an area where there's conflict with the Vatican. I didn't think we were in that story. Anyway, Ed Martin's nomination now officially kaput, I guess, pulled, although no one ever does any paperwork over at the White House, so who knows. But as far as this administration goes, I think it was a Truth Social post saying how wonderful and great he was, but he wasn't going to renominate him in an interim position anymore, and he was going to drop the nomination for him to take the job permanently. But that only created an opportunity for him to name another interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., and that means an opportunity to make things worse in terms of sheer dumbness of the idea, like of this person taking over. It's Jeanine Pirro, Judge Jeanine Pirro, she was like a judge about 1,000 years ago, an elected judge in, as I understood it, Westchester County, New York. And then she spent some time like as a deputy, district attorney at some point. So, I mean, she's been a practicing attorney. Martin was too, but he was still practicing, learning how to understand the law. She may actually be better than he is, and he was so insane and over the top. I mean, he was a January 6th guy himself. Jeanine Pirro was, drinking wine at home, at least, but at home. And of course, I always enjoy the fact that there's already Saturday Night Live sketches about her, and she's supposed to be U.S. Attorney for D.C. I don't know whether he's going to nominate her permanently to that job. She's got her own baggage, but she might actually be better than Ed Martin in that she may have residual memory, having been a district attorney or an assistant and a judge. Like writing letters, threatening letters to federal legislators and telling you better change your mind about making that speech or we'll kick your ass. That's actually quite unconstitutional. And that was not a problem for Ed Martin. He was happy to write those letters. I don't know that Trump is going to be able to pressure the same stuff out of her. I think she'll just be, kind of lazy about it. Ed Martin, for all of his problems, was energetic in seeking out people to persecute. I don't know that Jeanine Pirro is going to be that energetic, but the question is, will she say no to anything? That I don't think so, but she may express herself differently. So I thought that was of some interest, and we needed to discuss that. The New York Times has a whole article about what's going on and maybe a good summation of what Ed Martin was about. But before I get too into that, and I do want to illustrate that just so we have a good baseline to understand whether or not Jeanine Pirro actually performs better or worse than he does. It's an open question. I mentioned yesterday when the news was, as we were discussing with Greg, that Trump had jettisoned his still pending nomination for Surgeon General, which was languishing for some strange reason, and nominated a new one, who, as it turns out, is also, a bit of a weirdo, in a slightly different way. And now I mentioned yesterday also that there was a rumor that Laura Loomer had insisted we got to get rid of the then pending nominee, who was, I don't remember. I'll open up this article that I wanted to share with you. Dr. Jeanette Nesheiwat is my best recollection of what Greg had said the pronunciation was. Nesheiwat. And anyway, I said, I remember that there was some sort of issue with her, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and that I had put aside an article about that issue at some point to share with everybody, and now it was moot. But I found it, and it can be expressed in such a way that you will say, oh, well, it may be moot now, but holy cow, why didn't you tell us this earlier? All right. However, before I get to that, I want to also point out that this new wackadoodle that they, or I don't know what, that's been nominated instead, who? I forget already. I got to open up this other article. Where is it? Means, right. Oh, yeah. So, Casey Means, a wellness influencer. Anyway, as it turns out, she went to medical school, yes, but as I understand it, didn't complete her residency and so never became licensed as a physician, which is an interesting choice. But what was weird was Laura Loomer wanted Nesheiwat booted because she was, what did she say? Something like a pro-vaccine or pro-COVID somehow. Nepo baby something, and that's, I don't even know what she's referring to exactly about that, but maybe the other article will help us figure it out, because there's some discussion of the family in this other one. That was part of the problem. But yeah, Greg's recollection was, didn't she misstate something about her medical credentials? And that turns out to be true too. But there's another thing. Anyway, Laura Loomer wanted her out, and so up comes Casey Means, and now Laura Loomer is screaming, Casey Means has got to go, which is fine by me. I love the chaos. So does Trump, I guess. I don't want anybody listening to Laura Loomer, but I just think it's funny that you just went out of the frying pan and into the fire because Laura Loomer is a why don't you just-ist, and that's always going to lead to problems. Never listen to. You can end up accidentally on the same side as Laura Loomer, but never let Laura Loomer be your guide, is the point here. Okay, so as I mentioned, there was something in the back of my mind. Yeah, wasn't there something fishy, funky, hinky about Jeanette Nishawat? And the answer, if you haven't brought this to mind yet, and nobody, texted me on social media to say, oh yeah, it was putting it delicately, it's interesting. I want to find out now why she's considered a Nepo baby. She killed her dad. That's the blunt way. It was an accident, maybe, but yeah. So it's humanized by the New York Times in their profile of her when she was first nominated or floated as a nominee. This goes back to December 6th of last year. Joseph Goldstein wrote the article for the New York Times, How Childhood Tragedy Shaped the Doctor Trump Picked for Surgeon General, which is relevant. The subheader gives it away. At the age of 13, Dr. Jeanette Nishawat said she accidentally knocked over a box in a darkened room. A handgun went off, very strong, active voice there, leaving her father dead. So this is the most gentle way you could possibly put this, and I guess they didn't want to antagonize her. But as a gun fail, documentary, not even a filmmaker, an archivist of gun fail, I guess. This is a highly fishy story, and that's not the point of this profile. But you can distill it out from the very careful and very different kind of profile that Joseph Goldstein was giving her. Needing a pair of scissors, a 13-year-old girl, and it's doctor here, as a 13-year-old. A 13-year-old girl went into the bedroom where her father was sleeping, because that's where scissors are, I guess, in this household, and reached for a fishing tackle box on a shelf above the bed. But in the darkened room, she accidentally knocked it over. And this part is a quote. Something fell out of it, and there was a loud noise, she recounted to the police. I saw blood on my father's ear. On the floor was a .380 caliber handgun that had fallen with the tackle box and discharged. The girl's father had been shot through the head. The local newspaper said the police believed it was a, quote, freak accident. Well, okay. And then that terrible family trauma, and it is one, I don't mean to belittle that, which unfolded in the small Florida town of what? Umatilla? I guess Americans would say Umatilla. Maybe it's Umatilla. I don't know. In February of 1990, set the girl on a new trajectory. That'll do it. It was because of this event, she has said, that she grew up to become not a gun safety advocate, but a doctor. Saving lives, she thought, would help her cope with the pain and sense of helplessness she felt from her father's death. Now she is poised to become the next Surgeon General. No, she's not. But in December, they thought she was. Well, I'll tell you something. This is not supposed to be the point of this, but I need to spend some time on this. First of all, at the very least, I would love to have had the opportunity to ask her in confirmation hearings, does your experience as reported with your family give you any motivation? Is there any reason, or should we expect that you will acknowledge that if not gun violence, because this wasn't, as reported, violence, but guns and gun safety, is it that will you, as previous surgeons general have done, be willing to announce that you understand guns as a public safety, public health issue. And of course, if she wanted actually to get the job, she would have to say, no, they're not. It's just one of those things we have around that if you drop them can accidentally, instantly kill your parents. That's just the way they are. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. This gun killed people, but it's really because of me. I knocked it over, and so therefore I am on a quest to become a doctor, which, by the way, there's not a lot of doctors that would have a lot to do when they find their parents shot through the head. But, okay. Now, what the effing F happened here is the other thing. Because immediately, from my gun fail experience, I know that, okay, so it's listed as a .380 caliber handgun. Why do I say it that way as opposed to a .38? Apparently, I don't know what the deal actually is, and I don't know why this is the case. I'm not that much of a gun expert. I know that means I can't debate the gun issue. But when I see a .38 caliber handgun, they're talking generally about 38 things that they will refer to as a .38 caliber handgun. It's usually the revolvers that they're talking about. A .380, which, I mean, putting a 0 on the end shouldn't make any difference in terms of anything, right? Mathematically. But a .380 tends to be discussing a semi-automatic style handgun that fires rounds of the same caliber, but they may be slightly differently constructed, and I don't know whether it's interchangeable. But anyway, for some reason they don't call them the same thing. And a .380 is supposed to be most often refers to a semi-automatic. I don't know if that's the case, but that bears on things a little bit. But remember that the gun people will tell you almost all the time, no, dropping a modern handgun, i.e. not a Derringer, dropping a modern handgun will not set it off. And I came to learn from that, or came to understand from that when you hear stories about guns dropping and suddenly going off, one of two things has happened. Either someone has fumbled a gun and has gone to try to catch it, and in so doing has pulled the trigger. Possible, but, not that easy to do. Or they have accidentally shot someone by holding a gun without dropping it, and accidentally or mistakenly or absent-mindedly or intentionally pulled the trigger, and then they need a story for why there's a dead person. And the answer is, I dropped it. Everyone knows from the movies that I dropped it, and it landed funny, and kaboom, it just went off. Well, okay. Except, no, the gun experts who say you're not allowed to debate gun policy unless you understand, guns the way I do, say that does not happen. And I actually, for the most part, take their word for it. Because, just thinking about the mechanics of the guns, a properly working handgun probably shouldn't fire, just because even the percussion of dropping it on the shock of dropping on the ground isn't going to loosen the mechanism any and fire the gun. But who knows? Excuse me, brief break there. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, of course, is I'm thinking about what are the dynamics? How big is this bedroom? And I'm just thinking about the dimensions of most normal household bedrooms, and knocking a box off a shelf with a gun in it, even if you accept that hitting the floor will set it off. Like, to fire a gun from the floor and catch someone in the head who's sleeping in a bed, so prone, about 3 feet or 3.5 feet off the floor, maybe, is where their head is. Like, what kind of angle? I just have difficulty understanding the angles here of how does the gun hit in such a way that it I don't know, smashes the hammer in somehow. Like, what do you? So we're also you'd have to be talking about for a semi-automatic gun. I mean, I guess maybe a pin-fired thing versus the hammer-fired. If it lands on the back of it and just bashes it in and fires the primer in the round and out comes a bullet. Still, at what angle does it have to hit the floor and then rise so that it over the space between the shelf and the bed rises to 3.5 feet? And is their father sleeping, on the very edge of the bed with his head dangling over the side? How does this happen? Not sure if I can make it work, but I guess anything's possible. There's a universe of possibilities out there. But what bad luck that it catches him this way, to say the least, right? And kills him instantly, dead. I saw blood on my father's ear. You probably saw blood everywhere. But I mean, a 13-year-old child, trauma, you don't want to really bring that back up again. I don't know. But I also wonder, as others of you at home might have to, well, two other possibilities come to mind. She murdered her father. I have no reason to believe that's the case. But maybe slightly more believable is maybe dad committed suicide and the family story here was anything but that. Please we don't reveal that. But I mean, wow, what kind of, that also is highly, in a way, implausible. Like, what are the dynamics of this family that dad kills himself? And I guess it falls to mom to convince one of the kids, you need to tell the police something that might actually endanger you, that you accidentally killed your dad. But I don't think there's any reason for them to not believe you or to hold you for it pending an investigation either. So we might be pretty safe in doing it. Maybe they actually could come up with that story. That's not speculated upon in any way in this story because it's personally insulting to her, and there was no real reason to do that, to call her out as somehow dishonest and as a child and in a situation where there's trauma in the family, and that's clearly the case. And it would be traumatic whether it was an accidental shooting or a suicide. Either way, you just don't pry into these things. But I don't know if the physics work out any other way, but maybe there are examples. Anyway, they then go on to explain why she goes on to become a doctor, what her background is like, and you know what? At this point, we're saved by the bell, so to speak, from having to learn all of that, and we can just focus on the gun fail aspect of it instead, which is pretty interesting all by itself. Meanwhile, again, as I said, I saw Laura Loomer being upset about something, and maybe we can find that somewhere. But she basically was saying, oh, well, yeah. And one thing she was doing yesterday, not quite 24 hours ago, she was the one who was out there screaming, woke Marxist Pope, which she did, by the way, in direct response. She was replying to Prevost himself as Prevost on Twitter, calling him, I guess, a woke Marxist Pope. So I guess, that's just sort of one of the things that she likes to spend her time doing, yelling at the Pope. And if she is an advisor to the president, then maybe we will, in fact, get involved in a Twitter war with the popes, but I don't think the Pope's going to answer her. Then there was her reaction to Means, who, let's see, she was, here we are. Someone grabbed her tweeting it here. So there's two interesting things here. One, a siren thing. I don't know which one came first in time, but a siren emoji thing saying, in all caps, President Trump's pick for U.S. Surgeon General Casey Means said she prays to inanimate objects, communicates with spirit mediums, uses shrooms as, quote, plant medicine, and talks to trees. She also doesn't even have an active medical license. The inmates are running the asylum. Well, you have to hand it to Laura Loomer. You do not, under any circumstances, have to hand it to Laura Loomer. But you might say, well, who else would know better whether the inmates are running the asylum than she? But okay, that's a bit of hypocrisy. There is also this note from Lindsay Beyerstein, who points out, does she say Beyer or Bearstein? I'm not certain. I'll have to ask one day. Laura Loomer has already removed the head of the NSA, our premier signals intelligence agency. She tanked the last Surgeon General pick. Now she wants to sink, I think Casey means, but she's also bringing up the problem with Callie means. But anyway, but she says sink Callie means. She means sinking Casey means, with allegations of witchcraft. R.I.P. Enlightenment. This screen grab from Laura Loomer. This is arguably witchcraft, which she separates into two words and capitalizes both. I want to know which one of President Trump's geniuses chose a woman who literally talks to trees and spiritual mediums and who doesn't even have an active medical license to be U.S. Surgeon General. I would call her a witch doctor, but she doesn't even have a valid medical license. I'm not going to call Casey Means a doctor. You have no idea how many texts I have received from doctors, not just doctors, but doctors who are members of Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster, who are like, WTF is this? This is honestly insane. I do not believe for 1 second that Donald Trump made this decision. I refuse to believe it. So that's the out. I mean, in case you were wondering, is Laura Loomer acknowledging that Donald Trump has lost his marbles? No, she thinks somebody brainwashed, and she means RFK Jr., is brainwashing Trump. Now, Trump, I think, was questioned about means at some point yesterday and said basically the prelude to throwing her under the bus. I don't actually know her. I don't know her. I don't know who she is. Bobby thinks she's fantastic. That's why I nominated her. So, so much for personal responsibility. So, I don't know. We'll see whether she's able to drive this one out, too. There's no particular connection. And for Trump to have already said, I don't know her, that means it's also easier to throw her over. But it'll be hilarious to see him be still without a Surgeon General and be on his third nomination within 120, let's say, 120 days. All right, we'll see whether this one shakes out or whether we're saved by the bell on this, too. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, how do we follow that up? That's a pretty crazy one, right? Let's see. Wow, I guess probably next stop on the tour will be, well, come on, wake up, Pocket. Don't go to sleep on me now. I can't afford it. This intriguing headline, and maybe this has something to do with what's going on in Laura Loomer's head, although I must stop trying to figure out what's going on in Laura Loomer's head. I don't know what she's doing, but I thought it was an interesting excuse, right, to say, well, this other stupid nomination isn't Trump's fault. And by the way, what's his name? RFK Jr. having a rough go of it. Somewhere I saw this morning, and I did not mark it, and I really probably should have. What was the name of his vice presidential candidate in his brief and abortive run for the presidency, RFK Jr.? I can't even recall her name, but she was, I guess, tweeting and then being screenshotted and put on Blue Sky, saying essentially, I don't know what happened here. RFK Jr. has lost his mind. I was told, this or that story about it, and then I became his vice presidential candidate. And now he's out of control. I don't know. But it's an indication of things going poorly in Trump land, I guess. I'm just trying to figure out where can I search this thing to. Well, I can't even remember what her name was. But let me Google it while I'm on it. RFK Jr. Vice President Nicole Shanahan. That's it. All right. So let me see if I can search her on Blue Sky and see if I can find the post I was thinking of. Yeah, here we go. This is the first hit on it is from Republicans Against Trumpism. So that's of interest all by itself. Trouble in Paradise, says Republicans Against Trumpism. Former RFK Jr. running mate Nicole Shanahan, and then a quote, I don't know if RFK very clearly lied to me or what is going on, unquote. And I absolutely agree. She doesn't know what's going on. This taken from I don't know what social media website in which she says, yes, it's very strange, doesn't make any sense. I was promised that if I supported RFK Jr. in his Senate confirmation, that neither of these siblings, and here I think she means the Means siblings, and the word means is just that much more confusing. She means, yes. Who's on first? I don't know. But neither of these siblings would be working under HHS or in an appointment, parentheses, and that people much more qualified would be, close parens. I don't know why there's parentheses. I don't know if RFK very clearly lied to me or if he only semi-clearly lied to me. I'm not supposed to know. I don't think I understand what she's getting at here, but I don't know whether he lied to me or what is going on. It has been clear in recent conversations that he is reporting to someone regularly who is controlling his decisions. She doesn't want to believe it's him either. And it isn't President Trump, she adds, again, parenthetically. With regards to the siblings, the Means siblings, there is something very artificial and aggressive about them, almost like they were bred and raised Manchurian assets. They're all insane, all of these people. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what happens when they are, I don't know, tied up in the same burlap bag and thrown into the river. They go completely nuts. So anyway, there is that. And I thought it might make sense then to read this intriguing headline from Salon, if I can open it up correctly. Brian Karem, their White House columnist, writing under the headline, Inside the New Regime, source says Team Trump is growing, quote, disillusioned. Okay. How so? Trump's officials are quietly concerned, that is to say secretly and anonymously, concerned about his, quote, blatant criminal behavior. Yes. What took them so long? That's a good question, but a better question is, so why aren't they doing anything about it? And the answer, of course, is, I guess they're becoming personally enriched and or are afraid of being killed by a mob. So, interesting photo they chose to illustrate this cabinet meeting, February 26th cabinet meeting. Hilarious in that it is, let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men of the cabinet, including the president, visible in this photo. And they are all in what appear to be identically hued blue suits and red ties. Although RFK Jr., is that who's in this picture here? It's kind of blurry. I can't tell. Is he not wearing a tie or is he just wearing a blue tie? And you can't actually see Hegseth's tie, or this might be Lutnick. They may be wearing differently colored ties, but Hegseth's pocket square is the flag one. So anyway, it's just kind of funny seeing them all dressing identically to the president, except it's actually tragic. Anyway, moving on. What's the story here with them growing disillusioned? It is time to stop examining the chaos and time to do something about it. Well, they're not going to. I have a source inside the Trump regime who feels, in their own words, quote, a little disillusioned. I mean, you should be horribly disillusioned. I can understand to some extent the idea of saying, well, it's hard to tell the difference between crazy and, unique genius, eccentricity, let's say. So we'll give the benefit of the doubt for the time being to the person ratified as our leader by having been elected president in a free and fair election, if that's what happened. But we already know this guy. He's a known quantity. It really shouldn't have taken us this long to figure out. It was pretty clear that he was crazy the first time. Now he ran on an even crazier platform. And every indication is that he just doesn't have the mental faculties to do this job. And you should just have reached that conclusion already. But okay. Our writer here, Brian Karem, says he's got a source who says I'm a little disillusioned. This person says they signed on to the Trump team because of, quote, DEI going too far, which really means you're not a very smart person, and because, quote, woke culture was dividing the country, but is now concerned about the blatant criminal behavior of Donald Trump. Really? His last administration didn't show you that? Well, okay. This source first approached me by saying, I can provide you, and I'd be curious how they pronounced it, bona fides or bona fides, to show you I'm serious. Well, I mean, this is all right, whatever. That impressed me because I didn't think many people inside the Trump regime knew what bona fides were, let alone how to be serious. Okay. This source's concerns about Trump are indeed legitimate and deserve to be heard. Not all of us are buying everything he says. This person told me. We understand the problem, but we see no solution. You guys in the press, with very few exceptions, are not trustworthy. Congress can't be trusted either, I guess, and the judiciary so far hasn't been able to stop him. So what about the Democrats, I asked. That's not a good question. They hate us and won't accept us, and if they don't change their attitude, Trump and MAGA will keep winning. How? If they're incompetent and stupid? I don't know. By accident, I guess. That was echoed by former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh, who regularly speaks out about this. If there's not room for center-right former Republicans in today's Democratic Party, then today's Republican Party will remain victorious and our democracy will disappear, Walsh told me. I'm not sure why. To the point about the many failures of so-called reporting on Trump, this week we in the press continue to concentrate on the laughable comic book aspects of his presidency while asking him meaningless questions about largely irrelevant issues. There is very little real reporting on the dire results of his failed policies, although it is probably wise at some point to mention that they also are admitting essentially 10, 15, 20 different Jeff Gannons to the White House press corps all the time. Anyway, OAN, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, Daily this, that, and the other thing. All the worst possible press outlets are treated as legitimate in this White House. But still, the old line ones aren't doing, any great work at this point in terms of revealing the crazy and admitting to it anyway. Though they may think, and I guess there's an argument to be made that they're doing it with a wink, and letting us know, but they never come to the conclusion for us. That's, I guess, still up to us. So anyway, where were we here? If you want to laugh about a picture of Trump holding a red lightsaber on May 4th, or about the AI-generated photo of Trump as the Pope, join the millions who think it's all lowbrow comedy. If you want to laugh about Trump reopening Alcatraz, go for it. I know I did, but there is something we're missing by simply mocking the tragic and demented character who once again resides at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Trump told an ABC News reporter that the Declaration of Independence was a beautiful statement of unity, and that nonsensical description got far less ink and airtime. For the record, the Declaration includes a description of the King of England that Trump should memorize and perhaps recognize. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Okay. Fair enough. Trump told another reporter he was unsure if everyone should be provided due process, although the U.S. Constitution explicitly says so. He also said that he was unsure whether he was responsible for upholding the Constitution, although the oath of office he swore on January 20th is entirely about that. You know how that oath goes. It's reprinted here. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, Trump told NBC News' Kristen Welker on Meet the Press after she asked him whether everyone on U.S. soil is entitled to due process in a court of law. When asked whether he has to uphold the Constitution as president, he again said, I don't know, followed by this. I have to respond by saying again, and I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. Some have suggested this was a brilliant maneuver, giving himself some degree of plausible deniability. Others, like his niece, Mary Trump, say it's just another indication of his mental decline. There is no worst with Donald Trump. Every day is just worse than the day before. While I tend to agree with Mary on that point, my White House source says we are all missing the point. You want to know who's influencing him, and you want to talk about the destabilizing results of this man in the White House, my source said. If you want to know who's influencing him, then take a look at who has walk-in privileges in the Oval Office. So, this isn't just about Trump's mental decline, which is a given, as my source put it. Rather, it is about who is able to prod him into pushing their own private agenda. Trump is well known to be most influenced by the last person he spoke with. And to have that privilege, one must be able to walk into the Oval Office without an appointment. There's one administration official who recently told reporters he can do this, and it's Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. And we all knew that that was going to be the answer. But by the way, keep in mind that story alongside the one we read yesterday that Greg brought to our attention about the guy who's now on the lobbyist who's now on the outs. There's a way to screw that up, just in case you were wondering. And the answer is you don't bribe him if you make a profit off it. I mean, I guess Stephen Miller is able to do it because he's not profiting off of the position in a way that upsets Trump somehow. I'm not certain whether he's not profiting at all. I'm sure he's taken some cut wherever he can, but like just through insider trading or something like that. But Brian Ballard, I guess, pissed off Trump by actively selling the Trump connection and not giving him a kickback on it. Anyway, as we were reading, Stephen Miller has the walk-in privileges, and so he can do this. He is very good at getting the president's ear by telling him things Trump wants to hear, like that 9-0 ruling from the Supreme Court was actually a big win for you as opposed to a unanimous loss. And he doesn't mind waiting and being the last in the room to talk. That's frightening. It implies that Trump has no idea what to do and relies on others for validation of his actions. And since those people have their own agendas, our nation is a rudderless ship. One prime example of Trump bowing to Miller came during a recent Oval Office meeting with the press. Guess what he brings up here? Trump asked Miller whether the administration had won a case before the Supreme Court, one in which the court ruled 9-0 against the president. Miller said we'd won when Trump had lost, my source explained. There's a Blue Jay Stephen Miller outside today saying exactly that, even as we speak. No one pushed back on that, and Trump loves to hear Miller defend him. Trump believes him. Most reporters left in the press pool at the White House are not confronting Trump because they are propagandists pretending to be reporters. They are delighted to have access to the president and love to make fun of the remnants of corporate media. With the wire services kicked out of the pool and the subsequent loss of experience and professional acumen those reporters represent, I especially regret the absence of Jeff Mason and Steve Holland from Reuters, he says. Quite a few of the so-called journalists left in the pool are unqualified to do their jobs. Trump, of course, benefits from that. So, what passes for journalism these days? Here's an excerpt from a recent report from the travel pool. Quote, "Pool has been assembled and our gear has been sniffed for explosives by a very gorgeous girl named Cora. Pool was also scanned with a magnetometer, but this was outside Cora's area of responsibility as she lacks the opposable thumbs needed to hold that particular instrument. Cheesy? Yes. Funny? No. Cute? No. Reporting? Absolutely not." A little unfair in that I've seen a couple of pool reports before in my day, and sometimes there's just nothing going on and they're seeking to entertain themselves. Sometimes being in the press pool is actually a terrible way to be covering the news at large because it's kind of a bubble and you're spending most of your time standing around waiting, just depending on a Wi-Fi connection for, any sort of semblance of awareness of what's going on in the outside world. And sometimes you're not even able to use that. So you're just sitting there and you're reporting on exactly what happened. And sometimes they get cute. And the pool reports are not meant to be published per se. They're not hidden from view, but they're not meant to make it into copy from the news reporters. A news reporter who's on assignment would basically, skip that whole thing and go, "Ha, that's funny." But not include any of it in their report. Anyway, one recent story about from the Pentagon, has taken on a life of its own posing the question of how bad it will be if Trump arbitrarily reduces the number of military generals by 20%, as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has decreed. Why? Because, I don't know, trying to achieve these cuts wholesale through a contrived and meaningless quota would deprive the military of significant operational acumen at a dangerous time in our history. A Pentagon source told me on Background. Why 20%? Where did that figure come from? Well, they should at least be made to explain it, and just as critically, how they aim to achieve it. So far, Trump hasn't done that, and reporters are too busy taking their time writing drivel to ask him. They ask where he's taking Melania to dinner, or how he's able to shoot rainbows out of his butt day after day. Do they ask that? We did, of course, ask how Trump felt about Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney telling him that the nation up north is, quote, not for sale. One Trump insider called him Art Carney, who played Ed Norton, the sewer worker, in The Honeymooners. That's even before my time, he goes ahead and says. Those most trapped at this moment, I believe, are the handful of people inside the administration, and it may be a growing handful, who haven't completely followed Trump down his insane rabbit hole of hate, global conquest, greed, crypto scam, racism, misogyny, voter suppression, and delusions about ruling the world. There just isn't any place for those people to air their grievances and reach out for help, and that almost guarantees that the dissenters will be fewer in number and very quiet. Miller shows up in the briefing room to tell us that schools are teaching communism and claim that teachers are trying to turn 5-year-olds transgender and they must be barred from girls' basketball teams. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tells us he doesn't believe in germ theory, but does believe in chemtrails, while suggesting that the measles vaccine contains aborted fetuses. While literally painting the White House gold and spending every weekend, but maybe weekdays too, at the golf course is of his choice, Trump has half acknowledged that the country may be headed for a recession, complete with empty shelves in shopping centers. We may all have to learn to do less while he has more. And to drive that point home, he wants to erect a ballroom on the south lawn of the White House. Meanwhile, is that right? Meanwhile, I haven't seen that one. Elon Musk is still slashing federal jobs and putting our national security at risk, while Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio praise the neo-fascist party in Germany. Those who have Trump's ear definitely include Musk and Rubio. Wow, Rubio has his ear? I don't know about that. The former, who was ridiculed as Little Marco, with D's, L-I-D-D-L-E, during the 2016 Republican primaries, has become one of the most powerful players in the Trump cabinet. Not to mention that he'll probably have 6 titles before the end of the week. Rending of hair and gnashing of teeth may be picking up speed behind the scenes in what's left of the Republican Party, but right now that anguish has no outlet. Meanwhile, with a compromised press and Trump ignoring any judicial ruling he dislikes, the Democrats are still no help. They're nearly as crazy as Trump if they think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could be a viable presidential candidate. Oh, I don't know. Well, I wouldn't have put it that way. No matter what they think of her policies, very few Republicans who despise Trump would vote for her. That's probably true. I wouldn't, my White House source told me, but he's a Republican. I'm not crazy. The far left is as bad as the far right. And they're the reason I voted for Trump. Well, then you're worse than both of them put together. There are plenty of moderate Democrats who agree. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer promises to write another stern letter to Trump. Those of us who've covered this comic book nonsense before are in lockstep with my disgruntled source inside the White House. The White House, that's an interesting way of putting it. Well, it is. Although now increasingly being painted gold, as he pointed out. We want to get past all the deflections and concentrate on how Trump is destroying the country and how just maybe the United States can be reunited. United we stand, divided we fall. Remember that one? Someone has got to start talking about inclusion instead of division. That's part of DEI. You can't. I believe Joe Walsh nails that point. Oh, boy. There are those on the right who would vote for a Democrat after all this trauma, or who might if they felt like they'd be heard. At the very least, they might be willing to come forward and speak on the record if they weren't afraid they'd be prosecuted by Trump and ignored by everyone else. The real problem, of course, is the prosecution part, and ignored part is, well, welcome to America. People ignore you all the time. It happens. Not everybody just, falls in love with every powerful speaker that comes along, even if, and they're not always as powerful and influential and persuasive as they think. But it's an interesting point, and I'm glad we have it on the record. All right, let's see. Other things to tell you about before our next break that might be of interest. Well, if you, like me, are in the market for a durable appliances, let's say, we could use a new washing machine here. I'm going to make my best attempt to fix the one we've got in the interim. But I actually came to the conclusion that even if I fix the thing, it's several years old, and maybe it would be wise, given the impending, possible impending consumer doom due to tariffs, etc., supply chain, yada yada, to get a brand new under warranty machine that's up to date and before there are none available, is basically what it comes down to. So we may be doing that. So this might be of some interest. Another sort of random kill by probably the dodgy guys that doesn't make any particular sense, and will make you say, hey, why? That thing was making some sense, and it was helping. Why are we getting rid of it? EPA plans to shut down the Energy Star program. Employees were told that the popular energy efficiency certification program would be deprioritized and eliminated. Just say eliminated then, according to documents and a recording. So say Lisa Friedman and Rebecca F. Elliott of the New York Times just the other day. The EPA plans to eliminate that Energy Star. Popular. Is it popular? I mean, I guess I kind of like it, and I see the stickers on all of the appliances. But so it would be weird to get rid of that. A popular energy efficiency certification for dishwashers, refrigerators, dryers, and other home appliances, according to agency documents, and a recording of an internal meeting. Usually basically it told you this one is more energy efficient than that one, and you can expect to spend this much in electricity costs or consume this much electricity over the course of an average year. So you can, make some decisions about it. Most people probably end up making the decisions. Can I afford this unit, and does it have the features I want? Oh yeah, look at this. I'm going to use, this many kilowatts of electricity. Well, I guess that's good to know. Yeah, so maybe we do okay without it, but it does help to be able to say, all right, well, one of the things I'd like to compare is energy efficiency generally, even if I don't try to use it to predict my energy bill. This one's more efficient than that one. Okay. EPA managers announced during a staff meeting on Monday that divisions that oversee climate change and energy efficiency would be eliminated as part of an agency reorganization. That's just an ideological thing our moron president is into. That includes the EPA's climate change office as well as the division that oversees Energy Star. And do you really have to believe in climate change to understand why people would say they want a more energy efficient appliance? Like, even if you don't believe in climate change, why do you want to pay higher electricity bills? Isn't that just smart? That makes me smart. The Energy Star program and all the other climate work outside of what's required by statute, and then probably that too, honestly, is being deprioritized and eliminated. Paul Gunning, the director of the EPA Office of Atmospheric Protection, told employees during the meeting, according to the recording obtained by the New York Times. Mr. Gunning's office itself is also slated for elimination. For the past 33 years, Energy Star has been known for its recognizable blue label. Has it always been blue? I thought the label I'm thinking at that has the numbers on it is yellow, but the blue label that just says this gets the Energy Star seal of approval, I guess, is blue. Anyway, that shows that an appliance has met energy efficiency standards set by the federal government. It has been credited with changing the way Americans shop by encouraging manufacturers to make products that use less power, as well as with reducing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. They wanted to get at the greenhouse gas part, but people are going to just want, nice machines that use less energy. Not necessarily for climate reasons, but for their budgets. Since its creation under the first President George Bush in 1992, Energy Star has helped households and businesses save more than $500 billion in energy costs, and to get rebates and tax credits, too. according to the program's 2024 report. At the same time, it has also prevented 4 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases from being released into the atmosphere. And I guess if they really actively want that stuff released into the atmosphere, that's one thing. But I don't know why that can't be an okay byproduct of just letting Americans comparison shop in terms of this one will cost me more or less money to run over the course of a year. I don't know. But basically, this is just, we're eliminating everything that we can point to because we don't understand anything. And most of the dodgy kids were born after the initiation of the Energy Star thing. So they just think it's always been that way. Of course, they'll always put the energy numbers on there. That's how you shop. Duh. Well, just like thinking we can get rid of the National Weather Service because you can just use the Weather Channel to see whether it's going to rain or not. Okay. Not really true. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. I'm just trying to see if I can find various things in pocket that we need to update you on. I'm going to jump out of the Energy Star story at this point and figure that you got the gist of it. And just a couple of other things that I thought we wanted to sneak in here. Now, where is this one? I know I set this one aside at some point, but maybe I was just posting about it on Blue Sky. But we didn't read this story on the air, but I guess having posted about it at some point in the last couple of days on Blue Sky, it deserves some clarification because it was a shocking headline and everybody wanted to comment on the headline, including me. And for a while, it misled me about what's going on in the Red Sea and the number of F-18 or FA-18 Hornets, as they call them, we had lost in this engagement in the Red Sea. And so let me clear things up the best I can. Am I going to be able to read this thing or not? The Business Insider is the source of this, and I don't have a subscription. So I'll just have to do it from my best recollection of what's going on. The headline was U.S. Navy, let me see if I can read this thing before it covers up. U.S. Navy aircraft carrier in the Red Sea fight just lost a third, what? Super Hornet. Okay, that's what they call that one. A third Super Hornet in a crash involving a botched landing. Now, what was problematic about this was that it says it was a third F-18. And we were like, what? a third one. We heard about the one that fell off, and Greg gave us the explanation that they had to do some evasive maneuvers to avoid rocket fire, missile fire from the Houthis. And as crazy as it seems, that's an explanation we can like make physical sense of. Well, I didn't realize that they really would have to do that, but okay. Or that an aircraft carrier could bank so hard that planes fall off the deck. Then there was another one, and Greg told us about that one, that it was, what was it? The arrestment system. That's, I guess, the tail hook and wire. And I guess the cable failed in some way, and the plane went straight off the front end there, and the pilots ejected, and that's great. The aviators ejected, and that's wonderful that they were safe. But the plane was lost. Now, this headline, like I said, says that a third Super Hornet lost. And that really set people off. And then it went ahead and reported how it happened. And then and basically said, oh, yeah, the arrestment system. And it was like, for a second there, wait a second. Is this the same? We're talking about they had a plane land and the arrestment system fails and shoots off into the ocean. And then they were like, well, that's weird. We should try it again, which I guess, you can't just stop operations, right? But then it sounded like the next day, like somebody else failed in this arrestment system, or the arrestment system failed for somebody else. And a third plane was lost. But on closer examination, it turns out, in case you didn't see it correctly or read it differently, and I guess there was maybe a gift subscription or a gift link to the article that was originally included with this thing. So as it turns out, it is the third FA-18 to be lost during this deployment from, I guess, the deck on board the USS Truman. And the Truman has had a lot of trouble in the last couple of months. But as it turns out, no, it was just one plane that was lost to a failure of the arrestment system. One that fell off during evasive maneuvers. The third was lost in December when it was in flight and shot down, but by friendly fire from the same carrier group, which was a little difficult to understand. But at any rate, if I had the article fully available to me, I'd read you the encapsulation of it. But so that was the third one that was lost. And so it was a third jet was lost. But this report was being passed around a day after we had heard the news of the third one being lost by the arrestment system. And the fact that, it was just phrased oddly. So it made it sound like the first one was the plane that fell off when there were, evasive maneuvers going on. And that the second one was the one that fell off due to the failure of the arrestment system. And now there was a third one. But actually, the one that rolled, fell off the deck was the second to be lost during this deployment. There was also a collision. You may recall, and it's sort of, oh yeah, right, I remember that now. A collision with a commercial vessel in the Mediterranean, I guess on their way to the Red Sea, that was also of some concern, and that apparently led to the dismissal of the vessel's commander at that point. So the new one hasn't done, all that bang up of a job either, I guess, if you're just measuring in terms of like embarrassing mishaps. But there you have it. I just thought I would clear that up in case you, like me, were initially confused by the way Business Insider put it. I don't have a better report for you. All I can say is that one sucked. All right. So let's see. Other things to share with you. What's a good way we got to make some decisions about how to spend our time on this. There is a New York Times article that I think does a pretty good job summing up what the many things that were wrong with Ed Martin. So we could read it in the sense of, look at this bullet we dodged, but we dodged it. And we need to read this knowing that Jeanine Pirro is what we get instead. and I don't think I have to tell you much about Jeanine Pirro, but it might be. I'm sure we'll be seeing some profiles in the coming days that'll illustrate. We just know her as well. She's a Fox News talking head and seems to be drunk all the time. So not great, but I don't have any profiles, revealing profiles to share with you about her at the moment. But because she's a Fox News personality and has been spoofed on SNL, I gather that most of you probably know everything you need to know about her for now. When they find something even dumber and write it up, I'll share it with you. In the meantime, the bullet we dodged, we got a couple of glimpses into Ed Martin and his weirdness all along the way. We'll see whether this sums it all up. It is Glenn Thrush, Alan Feuer, Maggie Haberman, and Devlin Barrett together in the New York Times. Trump withdraws U.S. Attorney nominee whose extremism tested limits for GOP senators. The means, and I don't mean Casey means, the means of Ed Martin's ascent as the leading prosecutor for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington was his path out of power. What does that all mean? Ed Martin, the interim U.S. Attorney for Washington, was breezing toward the office elevator, not breezing toward confirmation, but breezing toward the office elevator in his signature trench coat, which is what flashers wear around town these days. Anyway, his signature trench coat in February, when he passed a group of about 10 young prosecutors preparing to leave, framed diplomas and keepsakes in hand. "Whoa, what's going on here?" Mr. Martin asked with a chuckle, seemingly oblivious of who they were and where they were going. According to people with knowledge of the exchange, I guess he just thought he was going to be friendly boss. Hey, did I miss a party where they were giving out framed diplomas? Why would people be carrying framed diplomas? Oh, the lawyers were too stunned to speak. They had just been fired, part of a purge overseen by Mr. Martin of about 24 prosecutors detailed during the Biden administration to prosecute the rioters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. That's who this was. That's why they had their diplomas in hand. They had been fired and they were leaving. They used to hang on the wall at the Justice Department. Now they were taking them home. The president nominated Mr. Martin, a conservative Republican political operative from Missouri, to permanently run the U.S. Attorney's Office, in part because he has emerged as one of the most passionate defenders of January 6th rioters. He being one himself, of course. A small but vocal far-right group that wields outsized influence. Mr. Martin has, in turn, used his authority to help carry out Mr. Trump's retribution campaign, threatening to investigate Democrats, academic institutions, and critics of Elon Musk, even while seeking to dismantle and delegitimize a January 6th inquiry. And by the way, on that note, I'll digress for just a second. If I can find this Blue Sky post that was relevant to this subject, prosecuting Democrats, I have this story from, or a post on Blue Sky from Yashar Ali, breaking via CBS News. The FBI, so I guess this is really Kash Patel's doing here, but similar in kind to what Ed Martin was doing. The FBI is leading a federal criminal investigation into allegations of alleged mortgage fraud by, not Donald Trump this time, but by New York Attorney General Letitia James, who, of course, led a state investigation into alleged mortgage and other frauds by Donald Trump. Oh, wow. Anyway, this is related to James's application for a mortgage and allegedly falsely stating information to obtain a more favorable loan. Did she do that? Was that ever alleged? We don't know. I've not heard that allegation. Maybe there was one. Maybe there's substance to it. Maybe not. I don't know. But don't put it past Kash Patel's FBI to launch an investigation like this, even if that was never alleged. Well, what if it was alleged? We need to find out. Had anybody ever alleged it? All they really wanted to do was announce a federal investigation into Letitia James, and it would be most funny to them as trolls if they were to investigate her for exactly what she prosecuted Donald Trump for doing. Anyway, back to the article. We jumped off at that point because we had heard about Martin using his authority to help carry out Trump's retribution campaigns, including threatening to investigate Democrats. All right. On Thursday, after an internal debate in the West Wing, Mr. Trump pulled Martin's nomination, telling reporters at the White House, "We have somebody else that will be great." And they don't. They have Jeanine Pirro. Mr. Martin's fate was sealed on Tuesday when Senator Tom Tillis, a key Republican on the Judiciary Committee, said he would not support the nomination because of Mr. Martin's work on behalf of the rioters. That dealt a fatal blow to his path to confirmation, leaving the committee deadlocked at 11-11, with all 10 Democrats on the panel opposing Mr. Martin. Republican leaders have said they would not take procedural steps to force a vote on the floor. They could have done that. Trump could have insisted on them doing that. He may have. They may have defied him on that. But this is also a good example of, well, it can go two ways from here, right? Tillis says no. What could happen? Could Trump, in concert with Republicans in Congress, force a vote? Yes. Will they do it for him? In many cases, yes, they will, but not in all cases. And so there's also the valuable lesson people have been pointing out on social media all day because of that. Sometimes with Trump, if you push back, he folds. He keeps saying, "I'll never." And there are certainly examples in which he refuses to give in to reality. But there's also plenty of examples of him just saying, "Meh, the hell with it. I can't do it. Who cares? I don't even know. I don't know him. I never heard of him. He's a coffee boy." So always push. It is possible that Mr. Martin's fall signals a limit to what Senate Republicans who have rubber-stamped Trump nominees are willing to accept. Maybe. Or it could just be this individual, for some reason, triggers somebody. And it doesn't work the same way for anybody else. Mr. Trump's approval ratings among key demographics have flagged in the past month, darkening the party's prospects in the 2026 midterms and perhaps loosening the grip of a president who will never again top its ticket. Maybe. Yet it is just as likely that Mr. Martin, a hyper-partisan activist with no experience as a prosecutor, there's a linked article here, might make a good summation of everything he has done in life. Well, it looks like it comes from February, so this will probably cover everything better. Known for consorting with anti-Semites and the far-right fringe of his party, was simply more trouble than he was worth. And lots of people pointing out the incredible hypocrisy, of course, of using anti-Semitism or fighting anti-Semitism as cover for violating lots of people's rights, making deportations and arrests of all sorts and threats against things that are not under the jurisdiction of certainly not under the U.S. Attorney for D.C.'s jurisdiction, while at the same time consorting with neo-Nazis and anti-Semites. It's a little confusing. Mr. Martin will be relatively easy to replace with a more palatable nominee who has a similar, if not quite as extreme, set of priorities, according to Republican aides, speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss strategy. It's a good thing they remain anonymous because they'll look really stupid now when you find out that the more palatable nominee with similar, if not quite as extreme, set of priorities is Jeanine Pirro, who is, of course, not at all palatable and is, in fact, quite as extreme. Anyway, nonetheless, the declaration from Mr. Tillis prompted a ferocious backlash among the influencer elites Mr. Trump is acutely attentive to appeasing, and some in the West Wing remained intent on fighting for Mr. Martin to the end, which is now. According to officials speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations, in his remarks, Trump suggested that he would find a place for Mr. Martin somewhere else in his administration, presumably to a post that did not require Senate confirmation. Over the past few days, people close to the president have considered a range of possibilities, including another position in the Justice Department, according to a person familiar with the situation. Martin, for his part, was still battling to keep his job on Thursday, writing, "Fight, fight, fight," in a social media post in the early morning hours. He followed that up with Psalm 23:4, the psalm they'll quote it for you here. "Yea, though I walk, through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." famous, certainly. But people who are consorting with anti-Semites should not be using the Old Testament. Leave us alone. Anyway, whatever happens needs to happen. Whatever's next, rather, needs to happen fast. Why? Well, it did happen, so don't worry about it. If someone is not confirmed by May 20th, when Mr. Martin's interim appointment lapses, his successor would be named by the judges who sit on the federal district court in Washington, and they probably wouldn't have gone with Jeanine Pirro in that. They are led by one of Mr. Trump's most vaunted judicial adversaries if you prefer, James E. Boasberg, the court's chief judge who is overseeing several cases against the Trump administration. So that would have been some just desserts. Boasberg gets to at least ostensibly direct his fellow jurists in selecting an interim U.S. attorney for D.C. All right, so could have had that, but we have Jeanine Pirro instead. Mr. Tillis has suggested a more likely alternative. The administration could pick an acting U.S. attorney to buy time. Representatives for Mr. Martin, the Justice Department, and Mr. Trump declined to comment. Trump told people that Martin was one of his favorite people at the department, according to people with knowledge of the matter. Trump, who speaks with Martin regularly, reassured him of his support in recent weeks. Get out of here. Support. Yet, if the Capitol riot loomed largest for Mr. Tillis, it was a revelation about Mr. Martin's association with a well-known January 6th defendant that turned many fence-sitters against him. Several times in recent years, Martin has hosted on his podcast a man named Timothy Hale Cusinelli, who has dressed up like Adolf Hitler, sketched cartoons, quote, depicting Jewish people as pigs, unquote, and once declared that he, quote, would kill all the Jews and eat them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, unquote, according to court filings. It's unclear what he actually meant here. Maybe he should clarify. Some of the president's allies in the Senate, including Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, have urged him to move on, and quickly. Trump has begun to reach out to potential successors, according to two people with knowledge of the situation. He didn't reach far, I guess. On Wednesday, Trump suggested that he did not know Mr. Martin's nomination was on the rocks, but also suggested that Mr. Martin's fate rested with the Senate, not with the White House. I didn't know that, but if anybody voted against him, I feel very badly, he told reporters at the White House. But that's really up to the senators if they feel that way. Days earlier, the White House seemed to be all in, enlisting former Senator Norm Coleman, everyone's favorite. Oh, he's got huge influence. Oh, huge. Who helped push Pete Hegseth over the finish line somehow in his confirmation fight to be defense secretary to help Mr. Martin negotiate the legislative shoals. Listen, Norm Coleman wasn't doing anything. All Norm Coleman was doing is he's using the fact that he was a former senator to gain access to the floor, to gain access to senators. And what was he telling them? It wasn't convincing everybody. No, actually, he's good. He was saying, President Trump wants him, and if you don't, and you vote against him, you're going to be targeted. I don't know what's going to happen, but people are going to be awfully mad. And basically all he did was just deliver threats. Norm Coleman holds no influence with these guys. For this, most of them weren't in the Senate until well after Coleman was out anyway. Republican senators most of them just haven't been around that long. There are a few old timers, and the rest of them are brand new, mostly brand new to politics. Anyway, for his part, Martin has emphasized the work he's done in bringing down violent crime in the city. None. It's been 100 days. Come on. Which began to fall under his Biden-appointed predecessor, posting news of arrests and meetings with community leaders on his personal and official X pages. Martin did not make it easy on himself. In a recent submission to the Senate Judiciary Committee, he denied having close ties to Mr. Hale Cusinelli and claimed to know nothing about his views. He was a longtime board member of the Patriot Freedom Project, which sounds pretty suspect, really, a legal fundraising operation for January 6th defendants run by Mr. Hale Cusinelli's aunt. And the two men appeared together at an event for that group in September at Trump's Bedminster Golf Club. I know nothing about it. During the event, Martin called Mr. Hale Cusinelli an extraordinary man, an extraordinary leader. In March, they both spoke from the same podium at an event for another group Martin has long had ties to, the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles in Naples, Florida, during which Mr. Hale Cusinelli praised Mr. Martin's actions. We have seen a vast restoration of the truth, Mr. Hale Cusinelli said, which is that January 6th defendants were not criminals, they were in fact the victims. Mr. Martin used his speech to compare January 6 prosecutions to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, which I'm sure he approved of, actually. Mr. Martin has made his share of unforced errors, alienating some members of his staff with religiously inflected office emails, pushing the boundaries of normal prosecutorial behavior, and even flubbing basic bureaucratic procedures. After filing in February, the clerk's office in the Federal District Court for the District of Columbia informed Martin that he had not submitted his official certification and was therefore not in good standing to file in this court. The issue was later resolved. Trump and paperwork, man. The same month, he sent a threatening letter to one of Mr. Trump's longtime antagonists, Representative Eugene Vindman, Democrat of Virginia, demanding information about his personal finances, skirting normal subpoena procedure by asking voluntarily for sensitive information. It also contained a glaring typo, instructing Mr. Vindman to respond to the inquiries by day, month, date 2025, indicating that Mr. Martin had forgotten to fill in the blanks. In April, Mr. Martin issued a news release announcing charges against a Washington man in connection with the vandalism of several Tesla vehicles. While he trumpeted these offenses as domestic terrorism, his own official statement acknowledged that the man was being prosecuted for low-level misdemeanor crimes. In March, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee asked the group that governs the legal bar in the District of Columbia to investigate Martin, saying that he had abused prosecutorial power by threatening his political opponents. In a letter to the D.C. Bar's Disciplinary Council, the senators also accused Martin of violating professional standards by refusing to recuse himself from a case involving a Capitol rioter that he had previously represented. And it's probably a good point to remind you, I think the D.C. Bar elections are still ongoing, and that Pam Bondi's brother is running for president of the D.C. Bar, and I guess nobody's quite sure exactly what that might mean for any investigation of Ed Martin, although I guess his dropping out will render it moot briefly, but if he lands in the Justice Department, you'll want to keep that thing active. But Pam Bondi's brother won't. So if you're a member of the D.C. Bar, vote. Anyway, the complaint followed revelations that Martin had quietly pushed to present evidence against Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, to a federal grand jury over comments he made in 2020 about Supreme Court justices. According to people with knowledge of the situation, Schumer had long ago apologized for the statement, saying it was overheated rhetoric. It really wasn't. It wasn't overheated at all. It was quite accurate. Alarmed officials at the Justice Department headquarters quickly blocked the grand jury request, according to people familiar with the situation. An earlier letter, Martin sent to Schumer, notifying him of the investigation, blindsided career Justice Department officials. He had not bothered to clear the missive or vet the case with lawyers in the public integrity section as required by department policy. He was thinking of himself as like some sort of mini attorney general. But the U.S. attorney, even the interim, especially really, but even a permanent U.S. attorney for D.C. is not like in charge of his office and not at all responsible to main justice. It just doesn't work that way. It is not clear, however, that the department's top political appointees have been displeased with Martin's maximalist approach. Martin, in coordination with one senior leader, Emil Bove, remember him, pressured Denise Chung, the head of the office's criminal division, to freeze the assets of a government contractor that had received a green energy grant from the Biden administration. Ms. Chung, a 24-year veteran of the department, quit rather than comply. In a resignation letter in February, she cited insufficient evidence of wrongdoing and accused Mr. Bove of trying to bypass the usual chain of command by intervening directly on the matter. Martin has made common cause with a group of like-minded lawyers in the antitrust division at the Justice Department headquarters. He's even tried to create an informal pipeline seeking to swap criminal prosecutions in his office for antitrust lawyers. prosecutors there, in his office for antitrust lawyers, according to a person familiar with the discussions. Nonetheless, morale inside the U.S. Attorney's Office has plummeted since his arrival, according to current and former officials. During his tenure, Martin, whose chipper, courtly personality contrasted with the belligerence of his memo and missives, often confined himself to his office and did not mix with the career staff, and probably a wise choice given what happened when he did. Up at the top of the article, when he ventured out, prosecutors found his behavior bewildering. At times, he has tried to quietly approach junior prosecutors to recruit them on cases they would later discover to be legally or politically fraught. His pitch, according to the person familiar with Martin's interactions with staff members, was, "Are you interested in helping out with something great?" To protect subordinates, some mid-level managers in the office instructed employees to immediately notify a superior if Mr. Martin made such an approach. The person added, "All right." Wow. We made it to the end of the article. He's a bit of a weirdo. Like I said, I guess we dodged a bullet. Not that we are absolutely done with him. He may resurface elsewhere in the Justice Department or elsewhere in the Trump administration. But I did want to get some brief description of his record in the past on the record here at the show, so that whatever, if he resurfaces at some point, we're aware of at least some of the details of what he's done. All right, so time now for us, of course, to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And, we may as well spend some time, give the transition time over to the carefully prepared summations of what Justice has got on tap for you. Here's what's on top of the list today. Trump's Ponzi scheme presidency continues to be the least popular in American and world history. Also, he's got this. A famed New York law firm's $100 million pro bono deal with Trump is backfiring. Yay! As employees jump ship in anger. The Washington State Supreme Court upheld a ban on large ammo magazines. And retired Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, David Souter, has died, unfortunately, peacefully, thankfully, yesterday at home in New Hampshire at the age of 85. Well, I had missed that entirely. Thanks, Justice.
NetworksRadio.com.
I mean, Justice Putnam, but thanks, Justice Souter, as well.
To Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
And in the second half of the show, he moves on to the chef's table, as he calls it, where prosecutors say Romanian treasures stolen from a Dutch museum could still be intact, and the Stockholm, Sweden City Council rejected the U.S. Embassy's demands that it comply with the Trump administration's rollback on DEI. Of course, it's a different country. See you next week.